Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the part 8 of our final virtual team webinar. We're sad to see that we're finished with this particular series, but I'm sure many of you had a lot of things going on, but we really appreciate you following us these last 8 weeks for the different sort of parts of leading teams sort of in a virtual environment. And today our focus is going to be around hiring and leading teams. Really using the behavior insights, the know, engage, and grow methodology that we've talked about over the last few weeks. And we will go ahead and present some of the case studies related to getting pretty deep into sort of understanding hiring processes and then leading teams. And I'm excited to be here today. My name is Leon Morales. I'm the managing director here at DNA Behavior, and I've been with the company since 2012. I have a huge sort of interest in human behavior and how people work and how they work better. And the last few weeks, we've actually focused on the Tuckman model around teams forming, storming, norming, performing, which I think we've gotten a lot of positive feedback. So that's really my interest, is really around helping teams work better together. And I'm proud to have my co-presenter here, Nikki Evans, and I'll let her do a quick introduction before we get started with the program.
Thanks, Leon. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Glad to have you join us. And as Leon said, it's been a fun series for me, and looking forward to continuing our connection with you, our community, as we finish this up. I'm hoping to continue to hear from you all. And like Leon said, I also really have a passion for leaders and teams working together and finding ways to make work more fun, more productive, more purposeful for everyone. So hopefully some of the things that we'll talk about today will help you see how to connect some of those ideas. So back to you, Leon.
All right, thank you, Nikki. So today we've got a pretty full program, and then I think from the last discussion we had, we did want to open it up for questions. So we've got a section here where we'll if you have a question, you can just raise your hand, and then we'll open up the mic and you can ask the question. So we're excited to be able to offer this as more of as a live webinar. Our expected time is to go about 45 minutes. Sometimes we go to 50, just depending on some of the questions that come in. But today's agenda is reviewing virtual work tips, some of the things that we covered in some of our earlier webinars, but sort of a recap of that. And then we'll go into a case study of a team, and then a case study on hiring. And I reviewed this hiring, and it's pretty in-depth. I think you'll get a lot out of that particular case study. And we do have a few poll questions we'll ask as we get started, just to get familiar with the audience. And with that, I think we've got our first poll question that'll come up on the screen. So the first poll question is, now that we've been in this for about 9 weeks, has your team settled into a good virtual team cadence? Meaning, now that everybody's working from home, is it working effectively? And options are yes, remarkably well, and we're keeping pace with each other. No, we are struggling, not being in a co-location, it's created problems. Or C, maybe we are getting better at virtual teaming. So that'll show up on the screen here. And let's see here. Great, I think we're getting the voting in here.
Yep, we're seeing people come in. We're
yeah, great.
About halfway there. Okay. Just give it another 5 seconds. All right.
Okay.
Well, good to see. Sorry, Leon, I stole your control here.
Oh, that's all right. I'm good.
It looks like it doesn't look like we have any super struggling folks here. I'm super excited to see that. So maybe getting a little better at it, and some teams that are really good at it so far. But looks like we don't have anybody stuck in this has created big problems for us. So
yes, I think that's really positive. And hopefully it's because we've been sharing and imparting some of this knowledge over the last 8 weeks. All right, so Nikki, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Leon. So I really just wanted to review here some of what we talked about in our very first webinar in the series around what our team is doing and what other teams can do to make virtual work. So we do a series of things, and so I've got this slide. There's a lot of words on this slide, and I apologize, but I've kind of got it broken up into, on the left-hand side, some process things that we do, and on the right-hand side, some tools things that we do. So from a process perspective, we have a daily meeting every day. It's 15 minutes. It's very structured. Each person reviews what they're planning to work on, progress that they've made on other things, where they need help. It runs for 15 minutes, and we are very good. I would say 98% of the time we stick right on that 15-minute or less mark. We have 9 people that have to present in that meeting, but we go very quickly through a standard cadence. The team uses the same, it's the same order that we go in every day, and basically our team leads are reporting out on the progress of what their teams are working on, where their progress is, and where they're stuck, so that we can take meetings offline to work on the areas that we're stuck or reprioritize things as needed in that meeting. So it helps us stay connected, and that meeting is recorded so that team leads that are not able to join us live can start their day hearing what the rest of the organization is working on, hearing where they can contribute. They can forward their questions in so they get answered on that call, so that they can hear those answers, so we can talk to people both that are on the call and people that will be listening to the call when their shift starts. So that helps us with even folks that are a different shift in a different country can jump on and hear the goings on of the team and feel connected to what's happening. And then each week we have a team meeting where we talk about our highlight of the week is where we start. So working with the principle of what are we proud of, and it really helps us to learn a lot about each other. What is the highlight of the week? Sometimes it's getting something big accomplished, sometimes it's a meeting that they've had with someone, sometimes it's a new opportunity, sometimes it's something in their personal life, but we get to hear kind of what was the most important thing or what was the highlight for someone's week. And then we go through our progress on our goals, we talk about our key metrics, we discuss any place that we're blocked. And then as a leadership group, we talk about what in the business do we need to be talking about? What are our plans? What is our strategy? What new information has come up? What new blockages have come up? Where do we need to reprioritize things? So we, again, follow a pretty strict agenda and cadence to that meeting, although the way the meeting plays out is different every time. Sometimes we end up spending a lot more time on key metrics. Sometimes we spend more time on strategy. It just depends on what the group needs in that moment. And we end that meeting with a rating for the meeting so that we know, was this meeting useful to people? Did people get what they wanted out of that meeting? And a highlight word, a word to sum up their week and to sum up the meeting. And again, that just gives us, to summarize in one word, how are people feeling? Which gives us an opportunity to follow up with people if we feel like there's some struggle still going on. Every month, we recognize a team member who does outstanding work. So everyone on the team has access to a form that they can fill out, and then those are tallied at the end of the month. And we do a recognition for someone who's gone above and beyond. And then when we have a significant initiative, we do an after action review, and we talk about what went well, what could be done better, what still needs to get done if there are lingering things that come out of that. And that's really focused not on the people, but on the issues. And so if, it's not a place where we blame one another for things that didn't go the way we wanted them to go. It's an area where we really come with curiosity and non-judgment to what happened there. What could we maybe anticipate for the next time we're doing something like this that we can learn from? What are learnings that we can do? How might we have supported each other better? How might we have asked for support better? So that going into the next project, we've taken some of what we've learned the hard way and make it proactive into the next session. Sometimes, and we haven't done this very often, but I'll just share another tip is teams can also do kind of a after action review and think about all the things that could go wrong ahead of a project. If we were doing a post-mortem of this project, we do a pre-mortem. What are all the things that we would likely be talking about in a post-mortem that could go wrong? And then what are we planning to do to prevent those things or to flag those things if and when they come up in our project? And I love that exercise, is helping people really think through what's likely to go wrong on this project, and what do we want to prepare ourselves to do before we see it go wrong. And then some tools that we use in addition to Outlook and Microsoft Teams, which we're using and to stay connected to each other kind of real time, and our phone system, which we use Ring Central, which allows us, again, to take calls from anywhere. So that was really easy for us to go remote because we didn't have a desk phone that we were tied to. That extension can follow us anywhere. We also use Box as our document storage. So we're able to share and collaborate on documents with one another. And we have a centralized filing system. So documents are not stored on individuals' machines. We all have access to our full library. We use Zoom like we're doing now for webinars, and we also use them to record our daily call every day in our weekly team meetings, as well as to do video conferencing and screen sharing with each other. We find it a hugely beneficial collaboration tool to be able to share screens with one another and walk through things. And then we use Wrike as our goal tracking and task tracking software. So we track our quarterly goals. We track the tasks associated with those goals and shared and recurring tasks. So we can see progress with each other. It helps our operations lead keep tabs on our quarterly goals and how we're progressing toward those goals. It gives us a place to check in on one another and make sure that we're making the kind of progress that we want to make. And then working with our customers, we do informal one-on-ones. When we used to be able to meet in person for coffee, we would do that. Now we do that via phone call or Zoom call, and you have to bring your own coffee now, but we've done toasting with coffee and occasionally a happy hour meeting with people. We're posting on LinkedIn and Facebook. We're posting on blogs. We're posting to our YouTube library fairly frequently now to try to stay connected with our community. Again, we're using Zoom and webinars. We have our support channels where we're using email and live chat and our website to help support our customers. We have a remote training program that we'll talk about a little bit later to allow both a self-paced and some coaching support to get through training on how to work with the DNA tools. And we're super excited that we're relaunching our coaching center into a coach network that can allow coaching on how to interpret reports, and then also just executive type leadership coaching on growing your own leadership with the use of the DNA insights. And so as we continue to evolve that, we're really looking forward to more and bigger things there. But those are ways that we are staying connected outside of the office with our community. And then I would say just other things to think about as you're thinking about virtual work. Review your priorities. Things that were important January 1 may not be important April 1 or May 1 anymore. Are the things that you are working on before you went virtual still the right things? What's changed about your market? What's changed about your customers? What's changed about your team? What's changed about your resources? What's happening to your customers? Are they still able to buy from you? What's happening with your team? Do you still have them all intact, or have you had to downsize or furlough some people? Do you still have the same resources? Do you still have the same, with logistics the way it is? Maybe you don't have the same raw material to output the same amount of product. With tax season being now stretched through July, do you still have the same amount of workload coming in? So you think about, are we working on the right things? Think about over communicating. Absent body language that we're accustomed to seeing, the words that we use are really important. And under stress, that message gets harder to hear. People are focused on their own worries and wants, and sometimes the context in which you hear things is different. So if you think that you've communicated something really clearly, check in again, check for understanding, ask your team to repeat back what they got from that. Make sure that you're saying it in different ways. Think about some of the communication keys that we talked about in one of our earlier webinars. Are you using each of those styles to connect with everybody on your team? Do you know what works the best? And can you make sure that you're taking time for your more careful team members to provide more instruction, to provide more patience, to allow for more time for questions? For your faster paced people, can they look at it quickly in a bulleted list so that they really understand what your message is? And again, just because you've said it once or you understand it and you've processed it does not mean that the rest of your team has processed it, particularly when you're talking about a change to a process or to an expectation that you had in the past. Changes to our processes, changes to our priorities, those are things that need to be communicated far more than you think is necessary. You will start to feel like a broken record, and it will feel uncomfortable to repeat that message so many times, but I guarantee you somebody needs to hear it again. So think about who your team members are and think about, again, asking for understanding and over communicating with them. And then also just set reasonable expectations. We are all at different levels of stress. We have different constraints and circumstances while we're working from home or while we're maybe out in public. Recognize that our expectations may need to shift given these circumstances. Can we expect everybody to be in front of a computer 8 to 5, or do we need to be more flexible about the hours and the slices of time that they're giving to us? Can we expect the same level of productivity from somebody working from home that they had when they were in the office, and they had transition time to an office, and their brain was set up to work when they were in a work environment, and their brain was set up to relax when they were in a home environment? I've heard a lot about people saying that productivity increased some from people working from home, and that may be true, but is that sustainable increase? Think about what are reasonable expectations. And I think also remember just to be kind to yourself and be kind to your team. Our energies will ebb and flow. Some days will be more productive than others. And so to the extent that you can really review those expectations, think about, are we being reasonable with one another? And then be kind to ourselves when we are falling a little bit short, or when somebody needs a little bit more time or a little bit support on something. So I'm going to walk now into kind of a case study of what we're going to call a peaceful war room. And a war room is often something that technical teams set up when they need to solve a critical issue that's time sensitive. And often technical teams will refer to those as war rooms, which came from kind of this what you would think is a room of generals pulled together to figure out what their tactical response is going to be to a physical imminent threat. Technology teams have adopted that verbiage as well to think about a war room. So one company used the DNA discovery to discover individual strengths and then put them to use when they were designing their war room. So they put a process in place where they would identify the skills and expertise needed to solve a problem. So they started with the problem. What do we need to solve here? What is the problem? Is it a technical outage? Is it a process failure? Is it where do we have a problem? And then what kind of talent do we need to solve the problem? Do we need out of the box thinking? Do we need some structure and some planning? Do we need a little bit of both of those things? They assigned a facilitator to the session. So someone whose sole job it was to watch out for the room, to help them adhere to a process, to go through the facilitation, to generate a team report. And so they generated a team report for everybody that was in the session. The facilitator would walk through the team report. This is why you've all been chosen. You've all been chosen for this war room because of your unique talents and because of our need to work together. And in some cases, those talents may have been like really outside of the box thinking, and then some practical planned ideas. And so those talents may be very different. And the facilitator's role was really to watch out for those differences, make sure that people were attacking problems and not each other. And then, talking about how are they going to use their strengths and what are the working rules going to be in this discussion. And then they would solve the problem that the war room was convened to solve. So then they would, so they spend a lot of time up front choosing who should be in the room, understanding the people in the room, coming up with some discussion and some rules of conduct for that room. So a lot of planning and then tackling the problem. A lot of times people start with number 6, let's tackle the problem, let's pull whoever's around in together and tackle the problem. And they never get to identifying the skills that they need to solve that problem, or identifying who the people are in the room and how they're going to best work together. A lot of times I've seen war rooms with no facilitator. And so the strongest personalities kind of take over, whether or not they have the skills and whether or not they're the right people to really be speaking the most. I see a lot of times war rooms that are set up where it's a hierarchy, and so people that are at the top of the hierarchy will speak up more often. And so I think that the way that this team was able to build out their process was super successful. So the team solves more problems more quickly and with more success than other teams. All of the team members feel appreciated for their talents, and the facilitator, like I said, watches out for those struggles that are going to come up when behavioral strengths clash a little bit. And they create boundaries and invitations to use those strengths and respect each other. So in person, this really works well. There's somebody there that's able to watch what's happening. All of the team members have a chance to speak up. You feel the energy of the room. You can feel when a pause is a productive, everybody's thinking pause, or when there's this tension in the room, and that facilitator can really help with that. So what happened when they all went virtual? Well, it's still really a peaceful war room. It was still really productive because the team had established trust. So things that they did as usual, they established a process for that, creating that trust and transparency by sharing their reports, by having a discussion about how they want the rules to work, by having a facilitator the team can still function virtually. What they've had to do is spend more time in those initial team discussions and agreements on what the team norm and rules are going to be to allow everybody to come up to speed. They've had more communication from the facilitator on the process, more reminders about what that process is and why they're going through it. More management of behavior from the facilitator, because again, emotions are running high, their stress levels are high, because in addition to being virtual and not being able to see each other, they're still tackling some kind of critical time-sensitive problem. So more management of that behavior, more communication from the facilitator, more watching out for listening for nonverbal cues. Do I hear smiling? Do I hear anger? Am I hearing snarky comments? Some, to the extent that you can get body language on the camera, they've worked to do that as well. And that requires somebody who's able to see the whole room at one time and not just who's presenting or who's talking. And so that facilitator role was still super important. But we're super excited for them that they still have been able to have a peaceful war room as they work through critical issues that have come up. So Leon, let me pass back to you for the next poll question.
Thank you, Nikki. And we're going to move, thank you, Nikki, for that, the war room, peaceful war room sort of case study. I think that's a really interesting one, and it was interesting to see the team sort of continue to move and adjust. So I think that's important. So we're going to move into the hiring process, and we wanted to lead off with a question here. Do you currently have a behavioral hiring process in place today in your company? A, yes, it does. We do. It does work. No, it sounds interesting. Or C, we currently have a hiring process. However, we might need some adjustments. So if you just take a couple of seconds and answer which one most relates to you in your hiring process. And we'll give it a few more seconds. We've got about 60% of the voting in. All right, I think we're good, Nikki.
Okay.
And it looks like, yes, those, the 17% that have a great process, that's excellent. Good for you. For B, 67%, we do see that most often that, there maybe isn't, there's a hiring process, but it may not be as solid, and that's something that people want to improve on. And then C, we currently have a hiring process. Of course, it could use some adjustment. So probably not too surprising that, that distribution. But I think you'll really find this next phase of the case study quite interesting. And back to you, Nikki.
All right. So how can you use DNA in hiring? And we'll look at a team that was looking for a part-time marketing resource to plan marketing strategy and direct the execution of marketing tasks in the group. So the team conducted an interview and they chose an adapter profile, and to remind you about our profiles. An adapter profile is a profile that scores about in the middle on all of our factors. So between take charge and cooperative, between reserved and outgoing, between patient and fast-paced, between planned and spontaneous, between trusting and skeptical. So right in the middle on all of those things, with the top two traits of cooperative and creative. And between pioneering and content, between risk-taking and cautious, between creative and anchored. So that means, as an adapter, if you're scoring right in the middle, it means it's pretty easy for you to flex and show the other of those styles. But one thing that comes up with adapters often is that they tend to be jack of all trades, master of none. Because they're so flexible, because they can fit in so many areas, they're able to do a lot of everything. This adapter happened to have the top two scores being cooperative and creative as his top traits. So the team set fairly vague goals and guidelines around what exactly the job would entail, but did have some key measures that they both agreed would be part of that 90-day plan. And part of the reason that the hiring team didn't set really concrete goals was that they didn't really have expertise about marketing, and they were really looking for an expert to guide them. And so they thought, well, we're hiring somebody to plan a strategy and direct what we're doing as far as marketing tasks go. And so that was kind of the job description. We need you to come in and set this up for us. And so that's kind of how the team started. So the new marketing expert started to work with the team, and he was introduced to the whole team and was part of daily meetings, and work started and everything was okay. And everybody was excited to have him be part of the group. But after a few weeks, his daily reports, became no issues, everything's fine, just regular stuff. He didn't interact with other people on the team except for the hiring manager. Even when other people reached out to him, it became harder and harder to engage as part of the team. And it's probably also important to point out that the leadership of this team, the main leaders, the hiring manager and the main leaders that he were working with were very pioneering, very hard driving, take charge, fast paced kind of individuals who had lots of ideas, had some creative ideas, were bringing him new thoughts on, can we do this? Should we do this? Can we also do this? And so I think what started to happen is this marketing strategist started to just start taking orders and started to try to do what he was being directly asked about, rather than saying, that's not really a strategy that I would go with, or that's not really why I think, that's not really the right thing to be doing here, or that's not really what we want to be looking at. So from a team perspective and the company perspective, the new hire wasn't bringing the kind of value that they hoped for. He really hadn't become a trusted part of the team like another contractor that was hired. And so, this other contractor jumped in, was more take charge, was a little faster paced, was and just kind of started running with job responsibilities. And that was kind of the expectation, although very different behavioral profiles. The team's expectation was somewhat the same, that we're hiring an expert, that expert's going to come in, own their expertise, and start providing input and, stand up for that function and sort of own that function for the team, even as a contractor. But the new hire wasn't bringing that kind of expertise and wasn't setting that kind of expectation, setting that kind of direction. From the new hire's perspective, he was a little at sea, like, I thought you hired me to do strategy and now you're asking me to do execution on things. Sometimes what you're asking me to do doesn't even seem like a good idea to me, but because you've asked me to do it, I'm going to do it. He came with one new idea about how to maybe measure some things, but then that became his sole focus, is on the sort of measurement tool and tweaking that, and less on the overall strategy and helping people to really figure out. And so I think a couple of different things happened. Because there weren't really a clear vision and clear communication about we need you to own this function for us. And even as a contractor, we want you to feel empowered to own this function. We want you to feel empowered to push back on the leadership team when we're asking you for things. We want you to really set direction and take ownership of this. I think this person, because they were an adapter, were trying to meet the needs of the leadership team as they were asking for new things, being highly creative and being highly cooperative, really wanted to fit in, really didn't want to be challenging to that authority, wanted to kind of avoid some conflict, wanted to do what he was asked to do, wanted to fit in, but then became quickly overwhelmed as the goals seemed unclear, as the expectations seemed to be different from what originally was signed up for. And so again, part of what happened was comparing that cooperative adapter profile to a take charge initiator who was also a contractor who came in and took charge of a specific function. The company having kind of the same expectation for one as the other. One worked out really well. We found another expert, it's going to work out the same way. But without enough direction for somebody that was much more cooperative and much less likely to take a stand and try to own something, that was a mismatch and a mistake that the hiring team made, trying to compare that initiator profile with, which is typically high take charge, high fast paced, high results focused, pretty direct in communication, versus someone that's much more cooperative, that looks to have to follow a lead, looks to bring people together. And so that new hire was trying to follow the direction and, you know, trying to kind of do the things that were asked of him, where the leader was looking for that adapter to set direction. And so both parties kind of missed expectations. And so everybody kind of knew that things were starting to slide and go amok. It really hit ahead when the new hire missed an important event that the company had sponsored. He had a role to play at the event. Everybody had agreed on, and that was a very clear communication, what role he was going to play in that event, where he was supposed to be, when he was supposed to be there. He didn't show up for the event. He didn't send a message about why he wasn't going to be at the event. He stopped responding to messages for over a week. No one could get in touch with him. Nobody knew if something terrible had happened. And when he did finally respond, he indicated that he had moved out of town. So he just, I guess the term now is ghosted, left completely, and eventually did respond, but the contract had to be terminated at that point. So things to learn from this: you have to set clear expectations for your goal or for your role. You have to do more communication around onboarding new team members with those expectations. You need to really think about, in a behavioral interview, is this person set up from a personality perspective to work well with this leadership team, to do the things that we're asking to do? So, you know, when the team looked at an adapter, they thought, that's great. They're going to be able to work with anybody on the team. They're going to be able to help us map this out. It's going to be easy to work with this person, and they'll have an easy time working with both our operations team, that tends to be a little more reflective and a little bit more process oriented, moves a little bit slower, and our leadership team that tends to be more take charge and a little more fast paced and more results focused. This person's going to be great to kind of tie those two groups together and work with everybody. But what actually happened is he was so overwhelmed with trying to figure out where he actually fit in the organization, and with trying to be liked and trying to be cooperative and trying to anticipate and do what the leadership team looked for, that he turned out not to be a good fit at all for the role. Although he had expertise in marketing, taking charge and setting a strategy was not something that was behaviorally comfortable. And you have to think that anybody that takes a new job is probably in some amount of stress, trying to figure out how are they going to fit in, how are they going to, you know, so that norming and storming phase, as you think about, as a new member enters your team, you kind of jump back to that a little bit. And so as this new member of the team was trying to find his way, not enough direction and not enough of a behavioral fit around what the expectation was, that this person would jump in and take ownership of a role and speak up and have a voice and push back against the leadership team. But that cooperative score, although easy for him to flex into take charge, not as comfortable a flex. And again, working with a leadership team that was all high on take charge, really difficult for somebody that's on the cooperative side to stand up to people that are naturally much more take charge. So without the leadership team slowing down and making it really clear that their expectation was to invite that pushback, to invite that feedback, to invite that expertise. And so those were some of the lessons that came out of, hiring someone who maybe had on paper the technical skills to do the job, but really wasn't a good behavioral fit to mesh in well with a leadership team. So I'm
Great.
going to kind of open now for questions. Sorry, Leon, I'll let you. But I think we'd love to hear from you. What did you think about the case studies that we shared today, about the other webinar series? What questions do you have? Do you have comments that you want to share? If you can raise your hand, we can unmute you, or if you want to add something to the chat, we're happy to see your comments there as well.
Great, Nikki, and I just wanted to add to, in our company, we've worked with adapters. I'm actually pretty close to an adapter in my initiator profile, and they are excellent to work with because they're so flexible and usually will take on any task that's given to them. But the double-edged sword is that they take on too much. So we really have to watch that, with individuals. It's part of our coaching with an employee as well, that they don't take on too much, because that's their natural inclination, is take on new things, because they are the jack of all trades in many cases. So that can just be a great learning around how to manage yourself if you're an adapter, and making sure that you're not taking on too much, as we pointed out or illustrated in the case study. So great job. And let's see, we are opening it up. If you just raise your hand, if you have any questions about any of the past webinars that we've done, if you have a question about it.
Or if you don't want to talk, you can type a question in the Q&A and we can handle it anonymously. We're happy to do that too.
I know we don't have some shy folks on here, because I know several of them. So, but maybe it's, I think I don't see anything coming in, Nikki.
I will ask you then a question, all of you. What are your takeaways from this today or from the webinar series? Can you just drop in chat or in the Q&A box? What are some takeaways from what you heard me say today, what you've heard Leon say, what you've heard us say in some of the other of the webinar series? What are some key takeaways or ahas that you've gotten from our presentation?
Something might come in a couple minutes. Nikki, I think we can probably just recognize if you do have a question, just put it into the chat box or the Q&A, and we'll manage that. And if you do want to chat, we'd be happy to open up the mic. Okay. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the call, this is wrapping up the 8th webinar. And if anybody actually wants to review any of the past webinars, 1 through 7, and the 8th will be posted tomorrow, they're available on our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and just type in DNA Behavior, you can pull up the channel, and there's a whole playlist there that you can actually view the video, and you can actually download the PDF of the session. So all 8 are there. So we welcome you to be able to do that and provide feedback. We do have a question here, Nikki, and I'll ask it. And I think between the two of us, we can I think the work you do is great, and I found little nuggets in each training, and that's from one of our recent graduates from the training program. So thank you very much for that. Okay. And then we did say from the last webinar, we do have another question here. This is, it's been an exciting series and underscores the benefit of the data. That's great. Thank you very much. In navigating change and increasing productivity in individuals. Thank you very much for that. You know, we really enjoy the work that we do and appreciate the feedback. All right. And we do have one thing that Nikki and I talked about when we started the series is we wanted to do something that was different in our program. So those of you that have been following us, we do have training programs. We have twice a year, we have a financial DNA and a business DNA training in the spring, and then we have another one in the fall. Well, with COVID-19, we knew we needed to probably change a little bit of the direction of that. And we've had an online program for those people that either were out of the country or couldn't attend. So we do have an offer that we want to share with you, but I do have one more poll question just to get a gauge of interest here. And we'll present that poll question, and then I'll show you what our offer is going to be. So the poll question is, what is your interest in a business DNA training program? A, you're ready to sign up now. B, I'd like to learn more about it. Or C, I'm interested, but it's not a good time now. Not interested in all. And the poll questions are up there, and we're just interested. Promise we're not going to hold you accountable if you put ready to sign up now, but just interested if individuals are interested. Great, we're getting excellent feedback. We got about 75% in, and we'll just go a couple seconds longer. Okay, let's just show the results, Nikki. So good turnout. We've got about 13% that are ready now. The B for 25% are ready to learn more. And then C, it's just you're interested but not a good time, and then not interested 25%, and that's fine. So appreciate the feedback. It's a good distribution of those interested, not too surprising. But we do want to make sure that as we conclude this training, these webinar, the series, that we have an offer here. We are going to start a remote training program starting the 15th of July. It's at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. It's a virtual program, and it's actually run over 8 weeks, and it's four 90-minute sessions that'll be sequenced, and it's a combination of in classroom on the training and then some self-study. So it does earn the designation of accredited business DNA training. It does also include 6 hours of continuing education credits for ICF. So if you want more information, you can find that at businessdna.com/training. Or if you would like some information about it, you can send an email to inquiries@dnabehavior.com, and that'll be the last slide that we show here. If you have an interest in learning more about it, I'd be happy to chat with you about it, or Lisa on our team. Both of us are very familiar with the program, and would be happy to chat with you about what that program is. We expect to have a good cohort of students, and over the 8 weeks period, it'll be a lot of fun. We do a combination of education and role play in breakout rooms. And Nikki, if you want to add anything to that, it'd be great.
Yeah, I am excited to present, and again, I think it is a good combination of, you can watch some videos, read through some slides, and then get on and do some real-time practice with how would you debrief a client, looking at different scenarios and thinking through what would you do. You can bring your own scenarios and we can talk through those given different profile types. Even if you don't have a profile on somebody, we could take some guesses based on what you've been able to observe, and maybe, think through how might you approach that client or how might you approach that employee. And so, and there's, again, we can do an awful lot online now and with breakout rooms to allow you to have some practice with each other, and then to share as a group, to have some practice with the instructor, with me, thinking through and brainstorming how might you approach your team, how might you approach your clients. And again, I think just really good practice on how to conduct a debrief, how to walk somebody through this, how to make these insights practical. for the people that you work with. And so really excited to, we got good feedback from our in-person training classes this year, and we're trying to transfer that some to the online program now, where you can do a little bit of self-study, get a very short recap on the self-study that you did, and then get some practice, ask your questions, get some real time, really focused on your specific scenarios. We're keeping these classes small enough that everybody can have a chance to bring up their real world experience and questions, and have some real practice and real lab work on practicing what it sounds like to do a debrief, how your partner experiences that debrief, what questions you have, and helping you get better at that. So I'm very experiential, and super excited to be doing that this year. So would love to have all of you join us, and recognize that not everybody's ready to do something like that right now, and that's fine. We're hoping to make this program recur, potentially either later this year or again next year. So if now's not a good time, we'd love to stay connected with you and potentially work with you in the future. So if you've got questions about this, like Leon said, inquiries@dnabehavior.com can get those questions routed to Leon and I, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have about the program.
Excellent. Thank you, Nikki. Really appreciate everybody following us through this last 8 weeks, and we wish you the best as you manage your virtual teams and sort of this new sort of way of working, because I think it's here to stay for a bit. And we do appreciate everybody. If you have questions, feedback, please send them. You will get a short survey at the end of this, at the end of the webinar, and take some time, because we're asking for feedback. If anybody's interested in future virtual or future series, webinar series, we're always open to the feedback. So with that, we appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you on a future DNA behavior webinar or in the training. Thank you, Nikki.
Thanks, Leon.